Hello, I'm Ben. Welcome to the channel. So today we're going to talk about why bosses and companies are not hiring Gen Xers anymore. And I'm a Gen Xer myself, and I've seen some of these things with certain companies. The biggest issue around current job hunters and job seekers are you have one generation that is majority overqualified in Gen X, and you have another generation that is less substantial and quits more rapidly, right, in Gen Y. And there's a bunch of data out about how long those people are lasting in jobs. And frankly, after Gen X, people aren't as dedicated to work as we were. And because we grew up in a time where people had a career and stayed at one company the entire time, the 20 years that Gen X has been working, or 30 years that Gen X has been working now, that has shifted to the point that most people are contractors almost. They work here 2 years, there 2 years. It's kind of hard to find people that have long tenure. And then when you do look into long tenure at companies, what you find out is a person that's been at one job for 10 years and another person that is in the same role that has jumped to 3 or 4 different companies. This person that jumps makes significantly more money than the person who has sat and stayed. And that created the trend where people are resigning roles because they're not getting paid enough, and then companies offer that person that's resigning the money that this person over here is making to try and keep them. But at that point, the loyalty is broken, so they move on. Gen X is a little different, though. We've had decades now to have experience in the roles that we've taken. And right now, the reason we're not getting hired is because a lot of people are overqualified in Gen X. Typically, the salary expectations, the median salary expectations for Gen X is currently $101,500, which is higher than all of that of other age groups. The reason being is Gen X is young still, in their 40s or early 50s. So you have a lot of dexterity and a lot of growth still that's happening, a lot of smarts that are still being cultivated. But on the other side of that, there's a lot of experience, a lot of success, and documented history. So that's why the salary suggests so much more for Gen X type workers. So the first reason we're not getting hired is we're overqualified. The second one, they claim that we're not tech savvy enough. That was the suggestion. That's completely false. You cannot tell me that a Gen Xer is not savvy when it comes to tech. Most of the new tech that we were using, most of the tech that's been introduced since the phone and the fax was introduced during our work lives and our work history. So the fact that someone would think that we didn't grow up in the technology area, yes, we did. The whole start and birth of technology was Gen X. So this is ridiculous. Now, we may not spend as much time on the apps and do all that nonsense because we're grown folks, but I don't think number 2 is a valid reason at all. This is an article from Shuttershack. It says it's from Money, so I got this from Microsoft, so maybe they can update their reasoning. The third reason they're saying Gen X isn't getting hired is they can't provide work-life balance. So basically, companies that don't supply work-life balance, Gen Xers have had enough time and development and professional development in their work lives that they expect to have a little bit greater offerings around work-life balance, and companies can't provide that for those folks. The fourth reason is that Gen Xers are closer to retiring. I don't understand the thought process. People are living healthier throughout their 40s and 50s, okay? When I was a young man, you would see somebody that looked 60 years old and you thought, wow, they look like a grandma or a great grandma, etc. I saw a picture of a young lady who was 60 years old the other day, and she looked like she was 40 years old. So the point is, we're aging better now because people are doing things better. So retirement may not be something that people are looking at. A lot of my friends that are Gen Xers like me, we never intend to retire. We intend to work for ourselves until we die, basically. As well as take on whatever commercial roles that we look to that we like or want to pursue. So they're saying that Gen Xers aren't hired because they're closer to retirement. The next reason companies aren't hiring Gen Xers, it says they lack collaboration skills. This is completely false, and I don't know where this stereotype came from. The suggestion is that it has been found that Gen Xers become increasingly closed-minded as they age. I think this must be written by someone that's younger. That's complete nonsense. Gen Xers are the capitalists of all these things that we now celebrate. We're the ones that pushed for the hire the right person 100% of the time, openly and aggressively in public, before people could talk about, the new diversity inclusion nonsense. And we came after affirmative action. That happened in our lifetime. So most of us, to stay competitive, we know that you hire the best person, period. And so when you get caught up in all these battles, it just makes no sense. And so the lack of collaboration, that's nonsense. All right, let's see what the next one is. Not enthusiastic workers. So a lot of this is coming down to personality traits. It's not Gen X specifically. I love working. Most people I know enjoy what they do. Now, a lot of people are caught in jobs that they don't want to be in because the lifestyle led them towards that from their personal choices, but that doesn't represent Gen X. However, if you were to pool that group of people, I could see where this would come off, because recently, in the past 20 years, there's been more surveys and more information actually getting out there and getting published, because surveys have been easier to get now with the internet and with what we're using online. It says the older generations are known to put their heart into everything they do. However, looking at research might paint a different picture, as AFLAC found that 57% of Gen X workers are burned out. So it's not that they're not enthusiastic. It's that this generation, Gen Xers, have been used to build companies, and companies are not loyal. So you build companies, you do all this to build a better world. And most of the time, in the last 20 years, a company will then shuck you off so they can hire somebody younger and cheaper. So you built the foundation, and then they built the house with other people. They X the Gen Xers, basically. So I don't think it's that they're not enthusiastic. I think that it is exactly what it's suggesting there, that they're burnt out. Because Gen Xers are probably tired of building businesses so other people can run them in the ground. The seventh reason people aren't hiring Gen Xers is they won't work overtime if they're not being paid. Well, frankly, I don't think anybody should work overtime if they're not getting paid. And to speak to that, if it's theft, okay? So just like you don't clock in when you're not at work, you don't clock in and leave, you clock in and you work. You should not be off the clock and working. Now, if you're paid a salary, that's a little different. Salary is pretty much 24/7. There should be some expectation of work-life balance that you create for yourselves in that salary role. But it says they believe that Gen X doesn't step up and work overtime. They'll simply find someone more desperate to fill a role. That's companies don't feel that Gen Xers, and it comes back to the experience too. You're not hiring some kid that hasn't done anything. You're hiring people that are doers, that have 20 plus years of experience. So you should expect that they would have a reasonable expectation around time and work-life balance. So that's the eighth reason that people aren't hiring Gen X, because they said they won't work overtime if not being paid. And also, guys, it's illegal for companies to require that you work without getting paid, okay? You work for a paycheck. If you end up getting a situation where you're expected to work without getting paid, that makes zero sense, okay? So all that does is reduces the amount you're actually making per hour. Even if you're on salary, if you divide that salary by 52 and divide that by 40, it should give you an hourly rate. If you watch how that hourly rate is respected on your salary, some of these salary positions can get down to where you're making $8 an hour because you're working all the time and there's no work-life balance. And that's Gen X that's lived through all that. So watch that, and I would not be at a company that looks at you that way. The eighth reason here they say is they aren't up to date with trends. Another reason why bosses don't hire Gen X anymore is because they're not up to date with trends. In the age of technology, many companies use social media to push products. However, reaching a broader audience isn't easy. This is why companies need someone who is up to date in trends to use these trends to push sales. Unfortunately for Gen X, most bosses don't believe they have it. All right, so unfortunately for whoever wrote this article, Gen X is the reason you have all this nifty technology that you enjoy. And yes, I said nifty from the 50s, because the point is we still use things from the 40s and 50s. And anyone that thinks modern tech, I read a book about that once, and I think we talked about it. Exponential Company is what it was called. And basically what that guy claimed is that everything new is fantastic and everything old was old and had to be dismissed, because if it wasn't exploding at the beginning, it wasn't worth investing in. That's nonsensical. And as you'll see, that everything's cyclical. So even trends, because frankly, kids are wearing what we wore back in high school. I've seen mullets all the time now, and that was popular back in the late 80s, early 90s. So I don't think this is valid either. Probably some kid wrote this article because I'm disagreeing with most of what I'm reading here. It seems like it's coming from somewhere that's not very hasn't had a lot of experience in a workforce. So number 9 says they don't meet the education requirements. And let's see what it is. It's ridiculous. Nowadays you need a bachelor's degree to get your foot in the door. This means if Gen X wants better opportunities that you have to make up and take out a student loan. A lot of Gen Xers had college degrees. Okay, so it was after Gen X that college fell off and everybody started this, why go to college when you can get a blue-collar job? Because people don't understand that the education is going to pay you back exponentially over a lifetime, a lot more than whatever your high-paying blue-collar job is going to pay, because your body will start to fail in your late 30s. So if you can't get paid for your brain in your 40s, 50s, and 60s, then you may be out of work because this heavy labor has driven you in the ground. I grew up on a farm in South Carolina, and my grandfather was a foot shorter than me because his whole lifetime he was working so hard outside and doing those things. So yes, according to a Georgetown University Center Education and on the Workforce study, by 2031, 72% of jobs will require a post-secondary degree and or training, which means many bosses refuse to hire Gen Xers who, while more educated than the generations before them, tend to have less education than millennials. That is hilarious, especially if you study what the millennials have graduated with degrees in. So this is absolute nonsense. And also companies at the end of the day that want to hire doers, Gen Xers are the doers. So that's who you should hire. If you're hiring millennials that got a master's degree in underwater basket weaving, and then another one's got a master's degree in soft feet on beaches, literally, guys, look at videos on what people are getting degrees in now. It is nonsense. There's not a degree that makes any sense anymore from a lot of places. So that's number 9. Let's go ahead and see what number 10 is. Obviously, you see that I'm not agreeing with this article at all. But let's see what the last one is here. I guess for some reason it's not showing me 10 of 10. So that's the 9 reasons that bosses don't want to hire Gen X anymore. So as you see, this article was written by someone very young, maybe even AI, because I think it's nonsensical. But when it comes down to it, these studies, guys, you got to put your thoughts in it and around what's being replaced. A lot of the business owners I know are Gen Xers now. So a lot of Gen Xers are leaving the workforce because of the quality hires that you can find these days. And when there are being so many limits on workforce and what you can find, it limits how much you want to invest into those things. So with this article, I would say thumbs down on this story by Maricela Reyes. It came out today, and I'm trying to see which site it was on, and it is not telling me. So yeah, I think it's a junk article. I think this is probably in response to a video I'm going to do here in just a few minutes. There are some statistics that are rather disturbing with the younger workforce and how many are failing in the workforce. They can't show up to work on time. They don't know that work is a place where you have to come and put your time in before you leave. They want to be on their phones all day. The difference between that and a Gen Xer is a Gen Xer is going to come and do the job and give you 8 good hours a day, plus typically average 9 or 10, because it's what we're used to. That's why I would continue to hire Gen Xers. Okay, so yeah, I'd say a thumbs down on this article. It's 9 reasons bosses don't want to hire Gen X. It's false. If you're in a place where bosses don't want to hire an age group, you're at a bad company anyway. The suggestion for hire should always be hire the absolute best person for the job, period. I'm Ben. If you like subject matter such as this, please like, please subscribe. Be good.